Hello and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncovered. We're actually joined here today by a very special guest, the woman that birthed me, my mother. Hello, mother. You all right?
Hello, son. Yes, it's a very intriguing introduction.
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Bit weird.
So my mum introduced you as your name because I don't call you by your name. I call you by mother.
I taught you well. My name is Yvette Park.
Yvette Park. So we're going to go through we are going to go through Mum's life. We're going to see, or Yvette's life. I'll use the word Yvette.
Yeah, I give you permission.
Thank you. So we'll go through Yvette's life. We're going to see, the impact that Jesus has had in her life, and lots of different things. But before we dive into that, we're just going to ease ourselves into the podcast.
That's good.
And we are going to do some very interesting questions that I have always wanted to know the answers to.
Oh, all right then.
Not really. I thought of them a while back.
All right.
And, I don't really care
I
what
might
the
not
answers
tell
are.
you the proper answer now. I know you want to know the answer.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
So, if you could teach a class on one thing,
Okay.
what would you teach them and why?
Well, after this morning, it probably would be how to shut my curtains properly so they look nice on this podcast.
And why would you say that?
Because the way you closed them was absolutely appalling.
Oh, thank you.
You have to have the pleats sitting, in the correct order.
I don't know what a plate is.
The little lines that go down the curtains.
Well, I think after this podcast, I'm going to feel depleted.
Oh.
Anyway.
Dear me, you got a sense of humour after your dad. That's definite.
Yeah, it's pretty awkward, isn't it? Yeah. If you could combine two animals, any two animals, and be that animal,
Oh, yes.
what two animals would you choose and why?
I would choose a giraffe and a penguin.
Why?
Well, my family know a penguin is my favourite animal. And my second favourite animal is a giraffe. And I'm very small, and a giraffe is very tall, so I'd like to be tall.
So the question is, what's that going to look like?
I'm going to have the head of a penguin, because they're so cute, and the legs of a giraffe, and the neck of a giraffe.
So it's going to be as tall as a giraffe, and you're going to have penguin feet.
Ooh. I hadn't thought of that. Well, yeah, because of penguin feet. Because I've never seen a giraffe. Well, maybe a giraffe can swim. Can a giraffe swim?
I don't know.
But hey, that'd be some combination.
I thought you were going to say never seen a penguin's feet.
No, I have seen penguin's feet.
So would you have a giraffe face or a penguin face?
Oh, could you have a bit of both?
You could have a
top
bit of both
half and bottom half, because they're both cute.
Could you imagine seeing a giraffe swimming in the water with all the
Well,
other
I don't know,
penguins?
because maybe they do.
Maybe they do.
Maybe I need your dad to take me on a safari so I can find out if giraffes swim.
Any experts out there in giraffes, you let us know.
Swimming in the water.
I would ask Alexa, but it'll start singing throughout the podcast.
Oh, I know. Don't, because you probably already started her off.
Yeah, probably. The next one. Do you have any pet peeves? And I know, because I'm probably
I've got loads.
the majority of them.
I've got loads. This mic's really heavy. Are you trying to test my
I am trying to test your strength.
bypass strength?
Yeah.
Bypass? That's a different thing altogether. Biceps. You've taught me well at bypass. Peeves.
Anything that grinds your gears, just does your nut in.
Your dad? No. Oh, see, now my mind's gone blank.
Do you
I
want me
have
to give you
loads.
my one?
Somebody that eats really loudly.
Oh, that's mine.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
When you're trying to enjoy a meal and someone's sitting beside you going...
Dad.
Yeah, Dad.
There is nothing worse, and I've said this in every podcast, so if you're bored, just skip on. There's nothing worse than sitting opposite someone who is smacking something, and stuff like bread. Why do you eat bread so loudly? It's supposed to be eaten
or slurping
quietly.
a cup of tea that's not even hot. Like, why would you do that?
That's Matt.
That.
Matt, if you're listening to this, you're
Matt,
a slurper.
Yeah, Matt definitely, is above. Yeah, he's a noisy eater. We love him. He's a noisy
eater. Anyway, what is your most embarrassing or memorable moment? So obviously, birthing me was memorable.
And embarrassing.
Why do I keep saying birthing me?
I don't know. And it was embarrassing
So
as well. Oh, embarrassing. Oh, I know. When you were children, there's loads I could really tell, like from my childhood. But when you were kids, it's got so heavy. I've got little weak hands. I'm getting old.
Hold it for
No,
you.
it's all right. When you were all younger, we went on holiday once to I think it was Devon. Yeah, it was Devon. And we'd been to the circus and we were coming back to the car park and there was a little chain. You were that young, you probably don't remember. I actually think you were in your pushchair and there was a little chain and me being me said, "Watch this, kids, I'm going to jump this chain." Caught my foot in the chain and landed planked right in my face on the concrete in front of
where I get it from?
everybody in the car park. I was absolutely mortified.
So that's where I get it from.
Yeah,
Then.
but there are loads, but that's one
there
that just springs to mind.
So your death row meal, what would it be? At the moment, what are you fancying?
At the moment, I probably would choose a steak.
Oh, I love a steak.
I've just come back from Northern Ireland with my parents and I cooked them steak. And yeah, even though you think, oh, love Chinese or I'd love chips, I think a steak probably with chips, fried onions, and a fried egg.
Raw what? Rare or medium rare?
Totally and utterly
blue.
Rare person.
Almost
yeah.
blue. Yeah. Like
3 minutes on each side, and that would be me.
I like that a lot. Dessert? Would you have dessert?
Well, see, I'm not really.
You're a starter person.
I'm a starter person, and I'd probably have calamari.
Calamari. Oh, I like that. Deep fried calamari.
Oh yes, definitely. Everything has
good.
to be deep fried. You're going to die anyway, so
Yeah,
what's the point of looking after yourself? I
true.
deep fry the steak. No, not really.
Just have it all. Would you rather have a mullet haircut or a ponytail haircut?
Ponytail.
Would you rather have bad gas or always have a really dry mouth?
I've already got a dry mouth, so bad gas. No, not bad gas. Who wants bad gas? That's disgusting.
You'd have a dry mouth and bad gas.
Yeah, probably.
I have bad gas. Would you rather be a high school teacher or a clown?
Well, I'm already a clown, so high school teacher.
Here's one. Would you rather be forced to dance all day, every day, until you got a perfect score on Dancing with the Stars? Or be forced to eat mashed potatoes until you get a perfect score on Beat the Chefs?
That second one.
Second one. That's a really weird question.
Isn't
Very
it?
specific.
But I couldn't eat mashed potato all day. You could eat it for me, but...
I love a bit of mash. Mash. Last one. Would you rather always have to hop around on one foot or always have to squat?
Ooh, always have to squat. I like squats.
Burning though, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But then you get used
burning
to the
more than this thing in my hand.
This is the first time we've done this, so I don't think I'm going to get my guests to hold them.
No, not poor little old woman that's like in their 50s.
I don't think you're a poor little old woman, just little.
Don't be smart.
And a woman. So, Yvette.
Yes.
It's weird calling you Yvette. Can you paint a picture of your upbringing for us? What was your family life like? And what were you like as a child? So just paint us a little picture.
Okay. So as you can tell from my accent, I come from Northern Ireland. It's definitely very heavy at the moment because I've only just returned on Tuesday. And I said something yesterday and your dad was like, whoa, you have come back from Northern Ireland. So yes, I'm from Northern Ireland. I am the oldest of, I always want to say 3 because there was obviously 3 of us, 3 girls growing up. But I'm actually one of 4 because my brother was born when I was 15. So hence why I always naturally want to say 3. So yeah, growing up, I was one of 3. We lived in a little place called Lisburn in Northern Ireland. What else did you ask me? Oh, what was it like?
Yeah, what was your family like?
My dad's a builder, a carpenter by trade. My mum had many jobs, but my most memorable one, which she won't thank me for saying, was she's a lollipop lady.
Oh yes, we love a lollipop lady.
So she used to stand up in the middle of this little island on a main road, and I probably was at high school by this stage. So what I was like as a child, I was a bully as a child, and if I'd ever been in a fight, she heard about it before I could manage to tell her when she got home, because the girls would tell her as they were crossing the road, "Did you know your Yvette was fighting again today?" So then by the time my mum got home, she was ready to let me know how she felt about me being involved. So yeah, I was a bit of a bully growing up. My dad was an alcoholic. So yeah, that's sort of how the family dynamics was. And my dad started drinking heavily after I was born. And yeah, it was hard. It was hard growing up.
So what was the home like? What what sort of things did that? What impact did his alcoholism have on you and the family?
It was hard because he was, he would have been violent towards mum, and that was hard as a kid to watch. We can look back now and find it humorous, having to find somewhere to hide together under the table usually, or to wait till because if he came home and got to sleep, then that was all right. So we used to hide and make sure, listen just till he'd fallen asleep. And then my job, being the oldest, because I loved anything to do with, well, back in those days we didn't call it SAS, because I like that.
Yes.
Anything to do with army. I should have been a boy, really. I was a tomboy. So my job was to crawl up the stairs to Mum and Dad's bedroom and not make any noise, not allow any floorboards to creak, and crawl into Mum and Dad's room and just make sure Dad was asleep. And then we knew it was safe for everyone else to come out. By then it was usually time to go to bed anyway, so so it was difficult. I felt a responsibility as the oldest. My sister and I, the sister's a year younger than me, are very close. So I felt the responsibility to look after them. There were humorous stories, of like Dad eating our Sunday dinner, but then we'd have nothing to eat. So like there were comical moments, but it was hard to deal with as a child. When I knew I was going to be doing this podcast, I am like nervous, as you know, because it's not easy to talk about the past in a way that, because both my parents are still alive, so you don't want to talk about it in a way that because I know they have regrets, so you don't want to do any more damage. But on the news this morning, there's a little girl who's going to 10 Downing Street today to put a letter that she's written, because her dad actually died from being an alcoholic. And she's put a letter together for more support for children who live with alcoholic parents. And, I did, and that support wasn't there back then. You just sort of muddled through. But the last thing I would have wanted, despite the fact it was violent and despite the fact it was hard, was for my dad to die of it. So it was a difficult home to sort of grow up in.
And what sort of impact did that have on you as a child? Then what did you sort of think about yourself growing up? What was your self-image like?
I think that's why I became, I don't know, I think that's why I became a bully. But when I say those words, I make that sound like I'm excusing what I did, because I was very aware of my behaviour. I didn't need to do that, but I chose to do that. I think it was because I first started fighting because you were known as much as it was a family secret, it wasn't a family secret because everyone knew, because we lived in a small community and they would see Dad roll home from the pub sort of thing. But one day I remember walking home from school and this lad said, "There's the daughters of the drunks," and I just jumped on his back and thought, you're not going to be saying that about my dad. So it sort of had that impact. So there was a lot of loneliness. And again, this little girl said, when she used to go to her friend's house, she would see what normal actually looked like. And that was the same for us. You go and we go for like lunch or go around just to play, and you'd see different families and how they behaved and thought, wow, is this how you're meant to live? So it had a hard, and it was hard on my mum. My mum's not perfect, and she would behave, she should say that. And she has a lot of mental health issues from having had my youngest sister. But she worked so tirelessly to try and keep us, look after us and make sure we had enough food and stuff. So yeah, it was it was hard.
A difficult upbringing.
Yeah, it was.
So what was your experience like with the Christian faith then? So you're brought up in an alcoholic home. You're witnessing some stuff that children probably shouldn't witness. What was your sort of relationship like with God at this time? What's your relationship like with the Christian faith? Because when you think about that, you're thinking, well, if that's what's going on at home, you wouldn't usually think that sort of family would go to church or would have a sort of relationship with God. That's what people might think. I know that's not true, but what was your sort of relationship with Christianity, with church? Because you've said that obviously Northern Ireland's a very religious place.
Very religious, yeah.
So what was your experience like with that?
Yeah, it is a very religious, and back, I make myself sound really old, but back in the day, as we'd say in Yorkshire, you were sent along to church, and you went along to church. So mine and my sister's life, it was consumed by it really. And I think, to be honest, part of that was probably Mum just wanted peace and quiet, so she found things to send us to. So we'd have church morning and evening and the Sunday. Probably in the middle of Sunday afternoon we had a Sunday school. Then we had Girls Brigade, and then we had like a children's meeting you would go to where it was like based on the Bible. So like it was almost every night. And we had like maybe 2 miles to walk to church and back, me and my sister, along the main road. I loved music as a child, so I went to a concert in this church. This American group came over, and Mum and I went to this concert. And I think there, I was probably about 8 or 9, that was the first time I realised that Jesus had died for me, and that I was a sinner. I knew I was a sinner. I didn't really need to be told, because, you know, beating people up and not being kind to your sister and not respecting your parents, I knew all that was wrong to do. So I knew that I needed to be forgiven, and to learn through music and just the messages that guy preached, that there was God who loved me, was like a new thing. Just sort of like, you only have one of those light switch moments. It just sort of all switched on, and that was the night I first said, oh, I need this in my life.
So then, growing up in that household, what were your aspirations growing up? What did you want to do with your life? Did you have any idea growing up in teenage years and adolescence years of what you wanted to do with your life? Paint us a picture of that, but also what you actually then went on to do.
Yeah. You had a careers day in third year of high school. You had a careers day where you sort of went in, and usually the typical one for a girl was a nurse or a teacher or a secretary. But I always knew I wanted to tell people about Jesus. I do know, obviously, because it was God. Yeah. But going on how I behaved, I'm sure a lot of people thought, she wants to tell people about Jesus. She needs to sort her own life out, that kind of thing. But I just knew the hope I had. And, even though my dad behaved the way he did, I loved him. There was a real deep love for him there. I didn't choose to ignore it, but at the same time I couldn't do anything about it because I was a child, other than pray. One of the things I loved growing up was on a Saturday sometimes I would get to go with Dad when he worked, and to watch what he could do with his hands was like amazing to me, just to watch what he could do with a piece of wood. And I used to sit and watch him thinking, this is what God made your hands to do. Yeah. He didn't make your hands to do the stuff that he did, to swipe ornaments and to swipe people and to be violent like he was. And that's the desire I had. I wanted to go off and tell people about the hope that there was in Jesus. When I was young, I used to hold kids meetings in my house, and it was like the Pied Piper. I used to go around picking kids up from the street, and then I'd fill my parents' sitting room or my bedroom. You were allowed to do that back in the days because there was no child protection and all that. And we used to hold a little kids meet at home, and then every Christmas we'd have a party, and my dad would come dressed as Father Christmas and give out presents. So it was always a desire there to just be a missionary.
What when you say tell people about Jesus, what would you tell them about Jesus?
Just the love, just to have a good father. And I don't mean that in any disrespect to my dad, because the Bible tells us that we should respect our parents. It doesn't say respect your parents if they're good, if they're bad. It just says respect your parents. But to know there's a good father who wouldn't let you down, his promises are true, that his word is true. If he says he'll do something, he'll do it. My dad would say he'd come to like racing, or he'd come to Girls Brigade shows, and then he'd never show up because he'd be too drunk and forget, and then you'd pray he wouldn't show up because you didn't want a drunk person falling in. But to know you're a God who wasn't like that was amazing. And just the hope of having forgiveness and just having acceptance, that's what sort of was driving me. I was fascinated by the life of Amy Carmichael, and just how she just had a real desire to tell people that, you know, they were heading in one direction and yet God could change their lives completely. At the young age of 18, which is basically just a spring chicken and a child, I left Northern Ireland, which was a big thing back then. Well, in fact, it still is to some degree. If we could just put it in here a little bit. I have a niece who's just come across to Reading to study to be a nurse. And when I asked her what university she was going to, she says, I'm going overseas. So I thought, having
like
left that,
I
thought, she says, I'm coming to England.
It's like a stone throw away.
But yeah, it's a big thing.
It is like no offence to anyone who's Northern Irish, but it is like a completely different world.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So moving to Scotland back in the 80s was like a really big thing.
Yeah.
So I left home when I was 18.
And you went off to Bible college, but in order to train to go off and do that.
Yeah, I needed it. I needed a structure.
And then you met a beautiful man with long curly locks and
not quite.
A broad Scottish accent. Tell us a little bit how you met Dad, because I think that's important to move us on to the next stage of what you sort of did with your life, what God led you both to. Because for those who haven't listened to Dad's podcast, I would consider going across after this and listening to it, because it's really cool to see how you came from like a similar walk of life and how God brought you together to go off and do a particular specific thing for him. With Pete, I'm not going to give a spoiler alert, but with all the experience that you found in your home. So tell us a little bit about how you met Dad, what you did after training, and sort of leading up to just about before you go and do what you're going to talk about. Yeah?
Obviously, if you listen to the podcast with Dad, I've forgotten. I'm not sure what, you're obviously getting his version, but I'm telling you the truth.
I'm not actually sure we talked about you in the podcast.
You didn't talk about me. That's disgusting.
Well, it's Dad's story.
Yeah.
When I was walking down the corridor, I saw a woman with a wine-coloured skirt, and there was this voice from heaven. It doesn't say that, but it's sort of an idealistic thing. So what actually happened?
Yes, it probably is something like that. I remember within about the first 3 months of that particular year, that was my second year, he came down into the room one day and he says to me, God's told me you're going to be my wife. And I'm like, you are off your rocker. Like, bearing in mind, God does save you from your sin, but there are aspects of your personality that he's made you like that. So that never sort of leaves. So my sort of, independent, I can do this all by myself thing still hasn't left now, as you know. I'll struggle to do something by myself. So this guy coming down telling me, and he looks like a really old man, bearing in mind I'm 18. And
was he balding at that point?
Yes. He wouldn't admit it, but he was. So bearing in mind he's in his 20s, and I'm only 19, and he looked old, bless him.
But that's quite a risky thing to do. Like, if I went up to someone and said, God, some of you are going to marry me. Well, that's a bit of a weird...
I know it is, but in the setting where we were, it sort of just seemed really like, well, he thought it was natural, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the clothes he wore, bless him. Like, we would have this joke, like his poor mum, like, used to knit us jumpers and all for him. And, like, it just wasn't,
Wasn't the vibe that you were going for.
It wasn't really the vibe I was looking.
You probably weren't even looking, were you?
No, I wasn't. Yeah. So yeah, he told me that, and he asked me to go out with him, and I was like, oh, there's just no way. You're not what I want. So it's like, I can say that now because we're like 30 odd years married, and he knows my story, my side of the story. And then we used to travel around different meetings, like singing with the choir in the Bible college back in the day. And every now and again, the principal of the college would point at you and say, tell us what Jesus means to you in like a minute or 30 seconds or whatever. And it was one of those nights your dad was asked to tell his story about how he met Jesus. And it was one of those like God taps you on the shoulder sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he said, you might not think this is the man I have for you. Or you might not think this is the man you want. But this is that I believe. This is the man I have for you. And then as I listened to his story, because I hadn't heard his story, and as I listened to his testimony, it was like, well, it just made sense. It just made, and I did fall in love with him. I've seen past the
well,
jumpers.
You must have done it if you've been married for 30 years, that longer.
I see past the jumpers and the slip-on shoes.
Still.
Still. And you know, one of the things I would say is I adore about your dad is the fact that he just loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted. And that's what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what God knew I needed. You know, despite my insecurities, and your dad knew I had them, he still loved me. And wow, yeah, that's my love story, really.
Love story. Taylor Swift.
Yeah. We left college, we got married, and then we moved to Dorset, to work with the mission for a little while.
Yeah.
And then I had my 3 beautiful children. I know.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, you're the baby. Becky would say you're my favourite, you know, but we shouldn't have favourite as parents.
Yeah,
but
you do really, don't you?
Well, you are my baby, but yeah, I love you all equally the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, I became
a
mum.
Really, like, true.
You can give me the £100 later, and then I'll tell you you're my favourite. So yeah, and that was a new experience for me because I didn't really have the home life growing up that gave me an example of how to be a mum and what I was meant to do as a parent. And then that's where we met Hugo and Hazel, and they were a great help and a great influence.
She became like an adopted.
She became like an adopted mum and granny to use, definitely. And I just adored being a mum. Really.
Yeah.
I love telling people about Jesus, and then next to it, definitely is being a mum. I love your dad, of course, too, like, and amongst all that. But yeah.
And you're a pretty good mum.
I just adored it. If I could go back again, I would do it all over again. But I can't because I'm too old now. Past that stage. And then we moved up to Leeds.
So tell us about the work that you went up to Leeds to do, how you got into it, and sort of what it was. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's a massive stage of your life. Like, that's a massive stage of our lives as kids. I've just said in Dad's podcast, like, that's the one thing that will always remain with me, the work that you and Dad did with the people that you worked with, and the impact that had on us as children and our faith, and to see faith in action, and to see, for a lot of it for me was to see the evidence that Christ is real, and the evidence that Jesus is real because of the impact that he had on so many people's lives. So speak to us how it all came about.
We first moved to Leeds to work with an organisation called Leeds City Mission. So that was, Dad was doing a lot of work there, and you were all too small, so I was just at home. Not just at home, because I loved it, as you know. And part of his work was to help out at a thing called Fresh Start. That's what it was called at the time, and it was just on a Sunday. Working with people who were homeless, who had addictions, and whose lifestyle was just chaotic. And then things happened that the guy who started it left, and they were needing someone to take it over. And I said to your dad, maybe this is the way God's leading it. And it was it was something I've always had a heart for, as I've told you, growing up. Just a love of, because it is such an impact when Jesus changes someone's life like that. It's a complete. It not only has effect on the person if you're a father or a husband, it has a complete impact on the whole home as well. And your dad's experience was different. He didn't want anything to do. He wanted away from that kind of lifestyle. And but then God clearly showed us that this is what these circumstances and the things fell into place, that we took it over. And we spent the next 16 or 18 years just sharing our lives, sharing who we were with people whose the society didn't want, and to be honest, who some church people didn't want. And just sharing our lives with them, sharing how we believed the Bible and the Lord Jesus Christ could impact and change our lives. We just fed them, we just loved them. We just made them part of our lives, as you know, and some of my favourite memories were Christmas. Because at the beginning, we would have Christmas with you, and our door was closed in a way. And your dad and I both were like, we're showing these people love, and then we're coming home at Christmas closing our door, spending time with our family, which is important. Don't get me wrong, it's important. But they're left with nothing. And they're still left with that feeling of aloneness and desolation, really. So as you got older, sorry, we felt, well, why don't we open our home on Christmas Day and have those who we had been working with come and spend the Christmas Day with us and have Christmas dinner. And to me, those are one of the most...
To me, they were as well.
Yeah.
That's what I remember about our Christmases.
Yeah.
Having people like Andrew and Craig
sitting
at our table, and Craig and Adi sat and like having food with them and just having banter with them on the Christmas Day was just great. It was brilliant.
Just to see how they watched, because they watch, you know, I'm saying they, you make them sound like they're aliens, but you know what I mean. We'd just clear our whole living room, wouldn't we? We would bring tables back from church and just sit like this here. I think at one Christmas there might have been 18 of us around the table, and just to give them a meal, to give them a present, and to make them feel part of a family. And
it wasn't like it's an us and them, or we're going to help you. It was actually
it was a family.
Like they became our friends. They became our family. Like the amount of those people, like we didn't look at them and think, oh, you're someone that we're going to help. We've got something to help you. It was we just want to be friends with you. We want to show you love.
You think of Tony.
Yeah.
You know, Tony, you know, became, we just love it. There's so many you could talk about, and we haven't got enough time to do that. But just to see how just being what Jesus would have been impacted them, and to watch what Christ did in their lives was fantastic, you know.
What did your sort of normal week look like? I know it changes, but what did it sort of look like? Because you obviously did the Sunday thing, but you did programs and stuff. Tell us a little bit in detail about that. So what the program looked like, but also sort of maybe a success story or something that you've seen which just blowed your mind, which you thought, wow, this is just incredible.
Obviously my times changed because I had to step in and out of it depending on what you needed, because not as in you, but the three of you needed, because I felt that was really important. But we'd do our meal on the Sunday, as you know, and you would help. Yeah, it was lovely to have my three kids help.
I absolutely love working in the kitchen.
Yeah, there were times, you know, I did take a step back and we didn't, for your own safety. Yeah. But as you grew as a teenager, you used to come and help me in the kitchen, and it was just, that was awesome.
And we go on trips out and like play pool and snooker with people. And,
that was awesome. So on a Tuesday, Monday was usually our day off. On Tuesday, we had a drop in at lunchtime and had a meal, and then afterwards had a Bible study with them that your dad did. In the early days, we used to have I think we used to have Tuesdays and Thursdays where we did things, and I had adapted a children's series of 12 weeks to fit the life of what an addict is like, and then that would be my job to sort of teach them about fear, anger, guilt, how Christ can help us in all these situations by using different things and different people in the Bible. Then as it grew and developed, we'd have an allotment, which Dad and I loved. And just to be able to teach them through God's nature, how, you know, despite how you plant things, the weeds grow around it, and how that's like life. And you have to continually work at clearing that and dealing with situations. That's like, I hate saying that word. And, you know, just how they continue to come into our lives, no matter whether you're us as Christians and churchgoers, or whether you're them. You know, all of us are the same, and we all have things that come into our lives that panic us and make us wonder what's going to happen. And then we had our charity shop, where then it was like a next step for the guys to try and help them to work towards getting back into normal life and employment.
Yeah, employment and stuff. Did you help them with employment and housing and all those practical stuff?
Your dad did most of that.
Yeah.
Because while he was running around doing that, by that time you were all home from school, so yeah, I gave him all the dirty work to do. So that was sort of like what we did on a week. And then, as you say, we'd have days out, like at half terms, where we'd arrange trips to the seaside or
Flamingo Land,
Blackpool. Like, why we ever went to Blackpool, it's like, I don't know what happened there. That was a bad move.
It was so good though.
It was good fun, but it was a bad move. So yeah, so that was sort of our what we did. And the success story, you know, there they're like sort of two success stories. Obviously, your most important success story, put the right teeth in, is when someone comes to know the Lord, because that's what you want. But there are also success stories in watching someone apply the principles of the Bible into their lives. They don't become a Christian. That's what we continue to pray that they will. But you can watch how they've applied the principles of the Bible, even without them realising that's what it is. So like Craig and Eddie, you know, to watch, man alive, you know, like Craig's a dad now. And just to watch and I think Eddie's a dad now too, to watch what God did for them was amazing. And to see them have their own homes, to actually see them have 3 meals a day and just be, it does blow your mind. So they are people that we would regularly hope to see when we're in Leeds. And then for me, it's Tony. It's just got to be Tony. So Tony was probably in his maybe early 60s when we first met him. Such an angry man. Such an angry man. And I never really found out whether he was not Southern Irish or whether he was Yorkshire.
He was definitely from Yorkshire, wasn't he?
I think he was, but just used to put on this Irish accent for my benefit. And he'd come in on a Sunday and he'd have a specific cup that he'd like to use. So don't give that mug to anyone else or he would become really violent. And maybe it was because he was like that. He reminded me a bit of my dad. I don't know, but I had a real soft spot for him. And he would never want to go into church, and he would do anything to keep others drink your tea slowly. He didn't want to go in. And then just to watch week after week how God and the Holy Spirit was moving in his life, to go from sitting at the back grumbling and shouting at your dad every time, everything he used to say, to almost sitting at the front turning around telling people to be quiet because this man had something to tell. And then to just watch what God did and him realise he needed Jesus. I think there's a recording we have of him somewhere telling his story and then telling other people, you need to come and listen to this couple. They have the answer. And then he became a big part of our lives, as you know. Loved your granddad Park.
Yeah, we absolutely loved him as well.
Loved your Auntie Angie.
Yeah.
He said, you know, if he was younger or she was older, he'd have married her.
Yeah.
So that was, and that was amazing. But to them have to bury him and take his funeral, and how he still ended up with no one to claim his ashes, but yet knowing, where he was. And it didn't matter if he'd no one down here to claim him because he was with his Saviour.
If I could collect all the people who I'd seen impacted through the work of New Hope, it would just, that alone would be evidence to see that Christ is real. Jesus was real, Jesus is real, and Jesus can change people's lives. I think that was a massive thing for me growing up.
We hope so.
As well.
I'd love that. Yeah.
And involving us in it as well, like involving us in it as kids in a safe distance, I thought was, completely shaped my faith. So around the same time moved up to Leeds, so that was sort of what you did in that period of what was probably 15 years?
Yeah, probably.
Something
We
like
were
that.
trying to figure it out. We're useless with dates.
Well, I went off to uni, didn't I? And that's when you sort of stopped just before
I think
uni.
we stopped in about 2015.
So it was about 12 years, don't it? 12, 15 years. So, yeah, in the early stage of that, when you went up to Leeds, you got diagnosed with meningitis, didn't you? So, life is life, and things happen. And this is just one segment of your life that had a massive impact on you and us as a family. So just share with us a little bit that God had taken you up to Leeds to give you this mission with addicts. And you'd have thought he's going to give you everything that you need. Well, he did give you everything you need, but he's going to give you everything you want. And you're going to be fine, you're going to be happy and healthy, and you're going to be able to lead it all and blah, blah, blah. And then you get struck with meningitis and you fall ill. Tell us a little bit about what was going on at that time, how you're feeling, what meningitis is, and how that sort of impacted your walk with God even up until now.
2004 I took meningitis. We only know that because I've had to get medical records for an ongoing health issue. And March 2004 I took ill. I've been having headaches, dreadful headaches. And I came home one day from buying out for coffee with a friend. She had to bring me home because I felt so ill. She didn't want to leave me, but I'm like, oh, it's just a headache. I was thinking it was a migraine. And then I could barely get up the stairs to go and lie down. And I was sitting at the top of the stairs, and your dad was out helping one of the guys move. And he rang and asked, do you need me to come home? And I'm like, no, it's just a headache. Carry on moving, Peter. It'll be fine. By the time your dad got home, I don't even know where you were, to be fair, guys. I think you just got on with life for me.
I can't really remember it. All I remember is us listening to Ozzy Osbourne in the car on the way to the hospital.
2004, how old would you have been?
I was about 6, 7. So I was just in a lot of year 1.
Yeah, so I actually think somebody...
To
yeah, so Ozzy Osbourne must have been one of the times your dad brought in to visit me, because it definitely was taking me to the hospital.
Sudden changes, weren't it? I remember us all sitting in the car.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
everyone crying, and I was looking around thinking, why is everyone crying?
So he had to carry me down the stairs. We should have rung an ambulance in hindsight, but we just went on into hospital. And I'm going on what your dad tells me, because, to be honest, I have really no recollection of that day specifically. But I do remember him coming out and rushing me in. I do remember looking in the waiting room thinking, I'm going to be here all day. But I was literally took straight through. And they told your dad, obviously, they thought it was a tumour because there was a shadow over my brain. They found a brain, which was good to begin with. And then your dad was like, oh, okay. And then obviously that changed. And then I was admitted and had a lumbar puncture, which is a story in itself. It took a long time. And then I was kept in for well over 2 weeks. So there was obviously a shadow on my brain which then caused this to attack my body. I do remember at one point thinking I was never going to get well and asking God to just take me home. I just said, I know I have 3 beautiful children, but I know I have a husband who could look after them, and I know they have a support system, but if this pain isn't going to leave, then please just let me die. That's how I felt. I wasn't angry. I wasn't angry with God, but I just never experienced pain like it. I'm not going to say I haven't experienced pain since it, but at that point I'd had enough. And then it took well over a year to get better. In some respects I never have. I've lost a lot of memory. So I no longer have any memories of like specific stories that my sister can remember of us growing up. You know, I can tell you little bits like I've told you today of what it was like in my childhood, but a lot of it is gone. One of the saddest things for me is I remember I loved being a mum, but there were a lot of things I don't remember about. I don't have any memories of you growing up. Those are gone, which is a sad thing. Sorry. So yeah, it affected my memory, and to have to relearn things was difficult, but again reminded me that I don't do things on my own. I am a very independent person and tend to think I can do this when I should be saying, Lord, I need you to do this. And so that was a big wake-up call, and I think it was a wake-up call for us all as a family, because I did do everything. I was a bit of a control freak, not going to lie, and you know that.
Well, that's evidence with when you tried to take off the, as we're talking about curtains, the curtain thing, and you fell and broke your leg on the chair. You fell on the chair. Anyway, carry on.
So having to learn to say, no, I can't do this, or Alistair, you need to do this, or God, you need to do this, was a learning curve for me on that part of my life. So
did that impact your... First of all, a lot of people would be like, you know, God's asked you to do this sort of specific thing, and as soon as you've gone and done it, you've been hit with this illness, which he has control over, because he could have just not given you it, or not allowed it to happen. How can you, one, believe in a God that allows it, and why would you want to then live for that God if something this horrible has happened to you? So that's the first bit.
That's a big question. That's the first bit.
It's a massive question. And then how it sort of impacted your relationship with Christ?
Okay, well, I'll answer the second one first, because
Yeah.
that's the easy one. It definitely brought me closer to him. And I know that's like the typical Christian answer, but it did, because I had been coasting along on my own abilities and my own knowledge of what it was to reach an addict, rather than what God would do. I don't mean that sound wrong. You know, you can coast along on your own abilities and talents, rather than what God wants to do through it. So that, and it definitely brought me closer to my walk with the Lord, because again, you can coast along thinking you're spending time with God, and you're not. You know, you do get used to being able to use the little Bible studies that I had, because you'd learned them, rather than bringing it before God and saying, look, this is what I've got to do today, God, and I need you to help me to apply it to the lives of the guys that are coming. So that was one thing. The bigger question, what was the bigger question?
How can you believe? How can you believe and live for a God that has
well, you've got
caused
to.
you pain?
I had to show that. Yeah, you know, and I'm not saying God gave it to me to show the guys that we all have things that go on, but at the same time we do. I think they think, looking at us as Christians and how our lives are structured, and they think we're perfect, and they think nothing can go wrong for us. But that's not the case. We all walk life, and we all have things that come along.
And because we live in a fallen world,
Yeah,
we're going to experience that.
And like, why should I not have pain like the next person? So then to be able to show them my faith in God through that, and like, I was back to work within 3 months, when I shouldn't have been back to work in well over a year. Maybe that was part of my stubbornness and determination. But a lot of it was, you know, I knew God's help, and I had given it, I'd surrendered what I couldn't do, which the previous year I was doing. Do you get what I mean by that?
I get what you mean.
And allowing God to use it. You know, and I would have been mortified at not being able to do the things the previous year, not to be able to, like, I would learn what I needed to do, and then I'd stand up to preach it, not preach it, but share it, and I'd forget it. I'd forget what I'd learned, and then allowing God to bring it back to memory rather than relying on my own strength. So that's what the big lesson it taught me. Just knowing in the past, looking back, well, he's had me in the past. That 9-year-old girl lying in a bed, crying and wondering what was going on. He had me. He had me in his hand. The Bible says it, doesn't it, that your name's written, and to know that hand, he's got you. And I think last year, we were going through similar things together. As you and your beautiful wife, and me and my beautiful husband. You know, our paths are different, but yet the struggles we're having at the moment are quite similar.
Yeah.
And I think you'd been away on a weekend and talked about the moon, and even though the clouds come across it, the moon is still there. The moon is still in the sky. It's just we can't see it. And that's like what God's always been for me. Might not physically see him, but he's got me, and he's still there.
Because in the Bible it says that, in the book of Psalms, it says that a moon is like a witness of God's faithfulness in the sky. And then when, you know, God, the moon's already there, his faithfulness is already there, but sometimes their experiences can cloud over God's faithfulness. But he's still there. Yeah. He's still faithful. He's still holding us through.
He's still a good, good father.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time to that 9-year-old.
Oh, self. See, I didn't mean to do that.
If you could go,
so that means that we're nearly the end.
It does nearly the end.
That's good for your listeners.
If you could go back in time then and visit that little 9-year-old girl in Northern Ireland, going through all those experiences, what would you say to her?
Just keep going. Keep on keeping going. It's like a tractor
Forrest
engine.
Gump. I just kept running.
Kept running. Yeah. People say they would change. Like, there are obviously aspects I would change, but then would I have done what I've done? Would I have met the people I met? Would you have had the experiences you've had growing up?
Would I be born?
No. Well, yeah. Because I maybe not would have married a 20-year-old. No, but you know what I mean? We all have regrets, and I have regrets that I treated my sister the way I did, or behaved on the streets how I behaved, or treated my parents how I did. You know, I think we forget, and as you get older you reflect, I think we forget that they were doing their best and I wasn't making it any easier. Like, for my mum, you know, she was struggling and I wasn't making it any easier by being naughty. And as a parent, you know, trying to parent your way through that. But yeah, would I change who my parents are? There probably are times in my life that I would have thought, yeah, I wish I had them as mum and dad, but no. Just know who has you, because he'll always have you. Definitely.
So, last question. What one bit of advice would you give to someone watching this video who's exploring the Christian faith, maybe has a similar upbringing to what you had, or maybe struggling in their faith? What would you say to them?
Find someone who will listen, someone who you can trust with your story or with your difficulty. There's a verse in the Bible that a lady gave me when I left from Northern Ireland. At the time I didn't understand. I thought it was a bizarre verse. But when you come from the kind of background that I come from, what a verse it's carried me. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And that's not only the spoken truth that we speak, but the fact that he is the truth. It's, because the Bible also says that Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So it's not only the words, it's the person. So he is the truth that sets you free. And you can be set free, because the devil is known as the father of lies. So the opposite of that is truth, and trying to find your way through that can be a difficult process, and just you find someone you know will speak truth. And the truth is the Bible, isn't it? What we believe it is as Christians. It is the Bible. And just keep searching, because if you keep searching, he says you'll find me. Yeah, I love that. So,
well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
We got there.
We did. Excellent. Nice one. Thanks.
Thank you.